You're listening to Mind Over Me, the mental wellness podcast with me, Scott Carter. I am a licensed therapist. Here at Mind Over Me, I offer an unconventional approach to therapy and mental health in general. The therapy system is misguided and broken. So many people are turning to mental health professionals for help, and they're just not finding it. It's my goal to bring some unconventional means, unconventional views, and maybe some unconventional techniques to helping people find mental wellness. Instead of being dependent on a system or a medication or a professional for mental wellness or mental stability, my goal is to always empower and help people by teaching them how to help themselves. This podcast is about self-efficacy, self-determination, and self-empowerment. Every person needs to find a better connection with themselves. Whether you realize it or not, you are the answer to your problems. You just need better information, and I hope to give it to you. So, thank you for being here. Let's dive in. All right, folks, welcome back to Mind Over Me podcast. I am back. Hopefully for good this time. I recorded a whole bunch of episodes. I uploaded a whole bunch of episodes once upon a time. And truth be told, one of my biggest struggles in life is being able to be consistent. This is one of my mental health issues. I tend to think that there are mental health issues that aren't really formally recognized, but they have a heavy impact on our lives. And being able to just be consistent and showing up and following through and finishing things that we start, I think that maybe ought to be on the list of things that are not listed as a mental health issue, but have a great impact on us. But I am back. I have been on a bit of hiatus. I haven't actually looked at when it was the last time that I uploaded an episode. It's probably been well over a year. And honestly, I haven't recorded too just because I've really needed to take better care of myself. I've needed to spend more time taking care of me, getting a handle on some things, just bettering myself in general. I'm happy to share a lot more about that process. Even though it's been a really personal one, I don't really have any issues with vulnerability. I think the things that I've learned, at least in my own growth journey, are, useful and helpful to other people. One of my philosophies as a therapist is that, therapists ought to be doing their own work. I think when people become a therapist, it should also be assumed or like a given that, well, now you get to dedicate a lot of your life to improving yourself, walking your own path and facing your challenges, your fears, your demons, your inner demons or whatever. Because I don't know, to me it seems slightly hypocritical for a therapist to sit there and be like, well, you have this issue and you have that issue when they are out there avoiding their own issues and not taking things on. Because frankly, that's just what a lot of them do. Some of them are even adverse to the idea of working on themselves or facing their own issues, which I know you might think what? That doesn't make any sense. It's the world we live in, my friends. The world doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The point is that I am back for now, making content consistently. Got a little extra time on my hands. Work has slowed down a little bit for me, and so it's always slower in the summer. Currently, it's August. And as I've continued to grow as a person and as a therapist and sharpening my saw, getting to be a better therapist and seeing things more clearly and developing my methods and techniques better and better, I just feel like I get better and better at what I do every single year. And again, as this list is compiling of issues and important stuff that's always on my mind that I'm learning about, that I'm gaining insights on, etc., and the work that I do, we just have so many important things to talk about. We have so many things that we just need to talk about. From where I sit, from where most of us sit, it feels like society is in this decline, this state of decay. And everything's just getting worse. Everybody's mental health is getting worse. It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch when you feel like you know better, at least in some regards, right? And say nothing. So it's my goal to share a lot of things that I learned, both as a person, as a practitioner, and what I hope will help people in all of this. And as a lot of these topics have developed in my mind, to me, it just should make for much better content, much more compelling episodes. One of my goals right now is to maybe penetrate some of those upper layers, get more to the core of what is actually going on with people and why we're struggling, why we're breaking down, what's happening to us. And that's what this episode is going to be all about. This particular episode is going to be about why, like, what is the true root cause of mental illness. This episode is called Shattered Minds. I'm going to talk about the theory of like the fragmented self, the fragmented identity, fragmented psyche as the core and the cause of mental illness. A few years ago, I'd sort of had this sense that like we were sort of broken into pieces. I called them fragments. It's just a theory of mine. I was basing it on some of my own experiences of my own personal growth, but also helping people in therapy. And so I'd even drawn this diagram with like a stick figure with all these other little stick figures around it. And then to my, happy surprise, it was a good surprise, I found internal family systems therapy, which was just basically works off the same theory. It was very validating because I'm like, oh, it's not just me that sees people this way or the human experience this way. So what am I talking about here? So there's basically a theory about psychology and the psyche. I don't know that it has an official name. I just call it like the fragmented self or like the fragmented psyche theory. And it just basically goes like this, that as we grow up, our psyche, because of traumatic experiences, and mostly trauma, but because of different experiences and different needs to develop certain defense mechanisms or certain survival mechanisms, and because of trauma, our psyche, our self, our identity, it basically breaks or shatters into pieces. So think of like a vase, right? Like a glass vase falls off the table, shatters into a whole bunch of pieces. Okay, like our psyche becomes shattered. So the more shattered fragments there are, right, then the more dysfunctional the person tends to be. Sometimes those fragments or pieces are sort of still attached, like in a psychological sense. And so that person has some integrity and some ego strength. While in others, the person is so shattered that they're just a mess. Like, so an example of that, for example, would be a personality disorder. I think of specifically borderline or narcissistic personality disorder. Hell, I've even seen different cases of borderline or BPD, borderline personality disorder, where some do way better than others. Some are way high functioning, relatively for the disorder, while others are an absolute hot mess of destruction and chaos. I believe that when we approach human behavior and human psychology in this way, things start to add up a lot more. Things start to make just a lot more sense. I think when we approach human behavior and human psychology with this basic premise or basic theory in mind, suddenly so many more things about us and our behavior and our chaos and our destructive cycles and our addictions and all that just start to make so much more sense. Because there is no general consensus amongst psychologists and mental health professionals about the real root causes of mental illnesses and troubling behaviors, right? I mean, if you go to the psychiatry end, they'll give you some BS about how there is some chemical imbalance in your brain. By the way, I mean, if you're new here, I do not buy this crap. It's never been proven. There's no research behind it. This is a story that was made up. So that they could just give you pills. By the way, that's truly where I stand on that. So again, a lot of psychiatrists are going to say, well, the reason why there's mental illness is because there's chemical imbalances in the brain and we have to get them sorted out. Even though this chemical imbalance theory has never been proven. And if you want to go look for the research, even now with AI too, it's so much easier to research topics and get some pretty comprehensive answers. You go research this topic, it's quite the rabbit hole. But there's been many, many theories over the years presented by different psychologists, different approaches, as to what the core issue is with mental health and mental illness. There really is no general agreement. There's no general consensus. Everybody's on a different page. And for me, it's clearly the fragmented psyche, theory. It's because we're broken into pieces when we're shattered. Okay, so for example, right, when you have different parts of you, so the theory states, by the way, that like let's say that you experience a traumatic event and then a part breaks off or a piece breaks off from your central core self or psyche, right? And now that that piece exists, it sort of acts and behaves like it's autonomous, like it's its own individual person. Internal family systems therapy even states as such that treat each part, I call them fragments, treat each fragment as though they are just a completely separate person because they behave as such. And they have their own agenda, right? They have their own ideas in mind of what needs to happen in order to prevent more pieces from broken off and preventing the person from experiencing more trauma, more pain, etc., etc., etc. And a person could have dozens of these different fragments or parts that have broken off, and they're all trying to run their own show. Think of like a bus filled with people, and they're all trying to drive it, and they all have a different destination, or they at least have a different route that they're trying to take to get to a similar destination. So what people experience is like total inner conflict, total inner turmoil, a lot of confusion, and a lot of just being pulled back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. A lot of impulsivity, right? It's like, well, at this very moment, this feels like the right thing to do for me, and then it turns out to be not. I also believe this theory very, very easily and helps explain, because it's the only theory I have that helps explain why our minds have a tendency to turn against us. It's an awfully strange phenomenon. I noticed that when your mind turns against you, because it does, and it happens all the time. Most people are their own worst enemy. The biggest adversary they face in life is their own mind. It's like the constant self-criticism and the self-doubt and the even like the verbal abuse that people inflict on themselves. Like, why would a mind do that? Isn't your biology, isn't your mind supposed to be geared towards success and self-preservation, right? One would think, but our minds would prove otherwise, that our minds they just turn against us. It's very strange and frankly troubling too. It's very strange, it's very weird, and it's extremely troubling. But when you think of your mind or your psyche just broken into a whole bunch of pieces and you just have a ton of infighting because nobody can agree on anything, to me that just makes a hell of a lot more sense, you know? So personally, I believe that this is the real root and the real core and the real cause of mental illnesses. My theory on the ego, by the way, because some of our egos become very loud, very annoying, very bossy, very destructive, very misguided, overinflated, thinks it knows everything. But one of my theories, or my theory on the ego, is that it is sort of what the result of the gap between those pieces. Like, so when you're disintegrated, right, the opposite of integrity would be disintegrity, which means that you're in a whole bunch of pieces that are far apart from each other, right? You're just disintegrated. So to me, my theory on the ego, again, this is just my theory, is that it's almost like the voice that is filling the void between those parts and trying to somehow mitigate all of them. I think the ego might be serving as a little bit of a go-between between all those parts and all those pieces, almost trying to give all those parts and all those pieces a collective voice when there isn't one. So in my world, this is the cause, the reason, and the core of mental illnesses. It's the reason why we're depressed. It's the reason why we have low self-esteem. It's the reason why we do impulsive things. It's the reason why, just all kinds of things. It's the reason why we have personality disorders. I truly believe that this is at the core of probably most, like schizophrenia is a little bit different. Schizophrenia is one of those things that's just a bit different. May not necessarily fall into that category. I think schizophrenia could be a different animal. I have my own theories on it. That's neither here nor there, but most mental health issues, I believe, are caused or rooted in this shattered psyche theory. I think the mental health field, professions in general, would do a lot better if they started on this premise and built from this premise. I think a lot more people would find a lot more help. I think a lot more people would just find healing. They'd feel so much better. Their behaviors would be better. The world would be a better place. Because again, building on this theory, I believe it can be fixed. In fact, I actually believe that internal family systems, which again is the therapy model that is built on this premise of the shattered psyche or the shattered self, I believe internal family systems could potentially be the true, I don't want to use the word cure, but the true solution. That's the word I'm looking for. I think IFS could be the true solution for borderline personality disorder or BPD. I've made YouTube videos on this and I've written articles about it, and I've actually gotten a lot of feedback from people who say they have BPD and that IFS was way more helpful to them than any other therapy model or any other therapy practice they did. Because IFS seeks to take all of your different parts and all of your different fragments and get you pieced back together. Hopefully by now, you might be asking, okay, all right, so the psyche is shattered. The mind is shattered. What do we do? How do we fix this? I'm so glad you asked, because I truly believe it can be done. It can be pieced back together. And there are specific methods and there are specific approaches. So one of the ways that we do this is just like the umbrella term that I use, shadow work. It's not my term. I know that. Shadow work is nothing new. I did not invent it. It came from Carl Jung, the great psychologist Carl Jung. Big fan. I'm a big fan of Carl Jung. I think he was a genius. Carl was a genius. He invented the concept of shadow work. The shadow being that it's part of your subconscious that you're not aware of, and it's where a lot of your fears and the darkness goes. The parts about yourself that you don't like, the hurt, pain, all kinds of stuff is stuffed into the shadow. And as long as it remains in the shadow, or remains in darkness, or it remains outside of your conscious field of awareness, it's going to have a massive impact on your life. Think of your subconscious as a pond and your consciousness or your awareness as like a cork that's floating in the pond. I think that metaphor is extremely accurate, especially these days, because overall, what I see day to day with people is decreased self-awareness. I mean, I truly believe that the reason why we're seeing such a huge deterioration collectively of our mental health and our behavior and all that is directly tied to our collective self-awareness, right? Our levels of mental or self-awareness, right? We are so distracted by anything and everything and other people and what they're doing and stuff and materialism and bad behaviors of other people and politics and politicians that we are totally disconnected from the thing that we need to be connected to, and that is ourselves. It's rare, for example, to see people holding themselves to the same standard that they hold others to. I mean, the lack of self-awareness there is, I mean, how do you ignore it? So the idea of shadow work is to, gotta sneeze. All right. The idea of shadow work is to go through the process of diving into the shadow where things are outside of our awareness. And when you make things part of your field of awareness, so in other words, it's like before, if you were not aware of them, they had an influence on you. They were kind of directing your life. They were kind of controlling you, pulling your strings from the dark parts of your psyche or your consciousness. The more awareness that you build around them and you bring them out in front of you where you can see them, the less control or influence are going to have on your behaviors. So that's sort of the core idea behind shadow work. There are sort of some different methods and some different techniques. Internal family systems is just, to me, it's one technique for doing shadow work. I don't think it's the end all be all of doing shadow work, but I find it to be incredibly helpful in terms of providing a structured, more concrete way of doing it, so that it kind of makes more sense. Because shadow work tends to be kind of mysterious, pretty abstract thing that people find confusing and difficult, especially when they've struggled with their own level of self-awareness. One thing that I really like about IFS is that it targets certain parts or fragments, right? Remember that individual fragments tend to be trying to work their own agenda, right? They're trying to drive your bus. But some of those fragments actually hold on to a lot of pain from your childhood. In some cases, it's been holding on to that pain for a very, very long time. That pain that those parts or that we hold on to for a long time They tend to change us over time. If we don't face that pain, it's going to lead us to misery. It's going to make us miserable. You have to heal the pain and release the pain. So one of the things that I like about internal family systems is that it is explicitly wanting to heal the pain. Let it go, release it, move on, be free of it. And IFS and shadow work in general is basically intended to find those fragments, find those pieces, kind of figure out what's going on with them, and then help them sort of join on board and attach to basically you, or to integrate with you. And instead of driving your bus, they're sitting in the back somewhere, sort of offering feedback or encouragement. The more we put these pieces back together, the more pieces that, we glom back onto you, the more you're going to experience this thing called integrity, because you're integrating the pieces. The more that a person does this, put these pieces back together, right? The more they're going to experience a lot more peace, a lot more healing. They're going to have better self-esteem. Their destructive patterns are going to go away. The pain that they feel is going to just kind of dissipate. Their addictions tend to just sort of fade away. Truly, they just no longer have a need to engage in certain addictions when it's done properly. Your confidence improves, your decisions improve, you just feel better. You let go of destructive cycles, your destructive patterns just sort of naturally end. There's just so many benefits to doing shadow work. I have a full article on my website if you want to check it out on the benefits of shadow work, saltcitycounseling.com. I'll put it in the show notes. But I believe that the best, overall, absolute amazing and best result that you get from shadow work is to improve the relationship with yourself, and that you're going to feel, as a result, more connected and more fulfilled. I think we have a huge emptiness issue that one of the epidemics that we're dealing with these days is just emptiness. Like nothing that we do everything that we do just seems to still leave us empty. And for example, I'm kind of reminded of this lady who went onto TikTok, and she went kind of viral because she was saying, she said, well, I'm thinking about divorcing my husband of 10 years. I told him 6 months ago I'm thinking about a divorce. And she proceeds to say that, well, he's a great guy. He's an amazing husband. He's an amazing father. We have a great life. We have a great home. Can't imagine anything being better, but he's just not meeting my needs somehow. And I'm really thinking about getting a divorce. So, and maybe you've seen it. Some people have. And my immediate thought was, no, you're looking for she's looking in the wrong place for something to help her feel complete or fulfilled. Okay? As long as you have this shattered mind issue going on, you're not going to feel connected or fulfilled or like anything's good enough. You're going to think that your external circumstances need to change, and you got to look further and harder and more and completely scrap an amazing situation in an effort to find a better one to solve this issue. It doesn't work, because you cannot solve the inner issue by doing external things. So people find themselves thinking if I looked a certain way, I would feel better, right? That emptiness would go away. Or if I had a certain job, or made a certain amount of money, or had a right type of relationship, or lived in a certain place, blah, 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 right? Then I would feel connected and fulfilled, and I would feel no longer empty. You cannot get it from external things. You cannot piece yourself back together by getting a bigger house or a nicer car. And believe me, I have watched people do it time and time and time again, and things will help you feel better, right? You're going to get dopamine hits for the short term. You're going to be like, oh, I feel better now. And well, what happens in 6 months, a year, maybe 10, whatever, and it's no longer good enough. It's because you haven't fixed the core issue. You haven't addressed or fixed the core issue. You are still disconnected from yourself because you haven't dealt with your shattered mind problem. So if you're sitting there thinking to yourself like, okay, how do I get started? What do I need to do to maybe do this inner work? You can start any place, anytime, anywhere to do your own shadow work. And it starts by building your personal awareness. You want to gain insights. You want to gain, so insights, awareness, and conscientiousness to me is like the triad of, I don't know what to call it. It's just a very good thing. You want to practice awareness, insight, and conscientiousness. Awareness is observing your own behavior. It's more of an outward thing. Like, how am I responding to things? How am I behaving? What am I choosing? What am I doing? Build your awareness about yourself. Insight is to look inwards. Is like, if you've never learned to look inwards, you can start today. You can start right now by looking at yourself. I realize that probably seems painful. The reason why it feels painful to look at yourself usually is because you've been avoiding it. People who avoid looking at themselves the most and the longest usually are going to find it to be really difficult because they're going to be afraid of it. It's going to feel really painful to them. In fact, the hardest thing you may ever do is to face yourself, face the truth about yourself. But you can do shadow work just by increasing your self-awareness. That requires a lot of self-honesty. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult. It's extremely important. It's extremely worth it. This is the path and the price of wellness. I think maybe there are a lot of people out there who think that the path to healing is all light and love. It's not, man. It's an ass kicker. It's a lot of scrapping and burning and healing and screaming and crying and letting go. It's rough. It's an ass kicker, but it makes you strong, and it's way better than the alternative. While it's possible to find a therapist that can help you with shadow work, I find that most do not. I will get people that contact me and they're like, oh, finally, a therapist that does shadow work. I've been looking for this. It's so hard to find one that does shadow work. Honest to God, it is some of my favorite work, some of my favorite therapy sessions. Just such a deep, existentially connected experience. It's so rich, it's so full, it's so powerful. People love it. They end up loving therapy. They love coming to their weekly session because of just how positive it is when they go through that process. The other thing that you want to practice if you're going to engage in shadow work is self-compassion. Learning to treat yourself in a compassionate way. Now, you may not know what that means or what it looks like, so get busy learning. Like, ask yourself, what would self-compassion mean? What does compassion mean? Do I even know what the word compassion means? Start there, right? I'm sure I'll talk about this more down the road. And who knows, I may end up doing a full episode on it. But I think there's even a book on self-compassion. I haven't read it. I'm not that familiar with it. But developing a self-compassion practice along with your shadow work is extremely, extremely helpful too. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of internal family systems, IFS, is because it has a lot of self-compassion already built into it. Going forward, too, what I think I'm probably going to do is include some shadow work journal prompts at the beginning of each episode, just because I'm such a big believer in shadow work. So important, so powerful, so effective, so helpful, very healing process. So I will probably include shadow work journal prompts at the beginning of each episode going forward. I think I just made the executive decision. Let me check with my boss. Yep, he says it's fine. He says that's a good idea. Thanks, me. Thank you. Love being my own boss. It's the best. So if you're really interested in digging in and doing some of that core shadow work, I would encourage you to buy a journal or a notebook and just use it for shadow work. Just make it your shadow work journal and use it to just dive in, dig it out, get into the nitty gritty, get to know yourself better, learn more about yourself. And in the process, it will help you kind of piece yourself back together. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to share this episode. Help me grow my audience, please. I am really going to commit to being more consistent with this. As of now, I will probably publish an episode every other week for the time being. So make sure that you subscribe or follow or whatever the case may be. Thanks for being here. Hopefully you found this helpful. And don't forget to go buy a journal, start your own shadow work, get involved in your own work. Just forget about what other people are doing. Just don't even pay attention to them. It's that their circus, their monkeys, right? It's wasted energy to focus on other people. So, okay, that's going to do it for this one. I'm trying to think, do I have a sign off for this? Deal with your demons? I think I need a new one. I'll have a better one next time. Okay, till then, take care.